there in TV land will see me and hear me. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's the Eugene Winter Northeast chapter of the Mass Archaeological Society. I'm Vic Mastone, I'm the chairman. Vice Chair Lindsay Randall is not here tonight. Treasurer / secretary Dick Miller is.
Yeah, you have.
I thought she was doing. I'm totally confused. I'll fix that. I've got to fix the bylaws anyway, so that'll be another night. Before we get started with tonight's meeting, I want to make a couple announcements. The chapter is co-sponsoring Addle Days at the Rebecca Nurse Homestead in Danvers this Saturday and Sunday from 9 to 3. At the same time, Dave Hamilton will be doing a dig on the property, so it's a twofer when you come down. You can learn to throw an addle, and you can see Nate in action, and possibly get to use a little trowel at the same time. Further on so that's the 24th and the 25th of September. On the 15th of October, the Robbins Museum of the Mass Archaeological Society is going to have a family day, which is going to be both an archaeological fair and a celebration of indigenous culture. So we'll have some entertainment and food. It is smack between Indigenous Peoples Day and the International Day of Archaeology. So it's kind of nice to do that joint celebration. We will be having some more meetings this year as well after tonight. The next one will be October 18th. After that will be November 15th. And after that will likely be November 13th, or it might be the week earlier. We haven't decided yet. For those of you who haven't paid your chapter dues, please send in your $6. That goes towards us using this space. We make a donation annually to the Peabody Institute through the Phillips Academy, as well as other things like paying for the speaker memberships in the MAS. So we really can use that support, and speaker dinners at certain times as well. And I'd also like to make a plea that you consider joining the Mass Archaeological Society. It's individual members at 30, families of up to 6 people at 35, which I think is a bargain. I want to drop it down to 34 members, but I've been overruled. And if you're a senior or a student, $20 a year to get the bulletin, I think is a pretty good deal. With that, I'm going to introduce tonight's talk, Project Mishoon. It's Underwater Treasures of the Nipmucs. I did write down the phonetic name of the community, the Hassanamisco. The Hassanamisco Nipmucs, and I want to introduce Cheryl Watching Crow Stedler, who is in Nipmuc. She's an elder of the Nipmuc Nation, or the Nipmuc Hassanamisco. It'll take me a while. This is
Nipmuc is good.
Nipmuc, and she's also a council member. She maintains tribal communications for them. She is very active in helping with genealogical assistance with Native ancestry. She's worked on family search in the New England Historical and Genealogical Society in creating a collaborative documentary known as Dawnland Voices, an anthology of writing from Indigenous New England. She's a former microbiologist and a project manager in the pharmaceutical industry. She's an elementary educator, writer, and a cultural educator now living in Massachusetts. And welcome to our state finally as a resident and taxpayer. I need that money for my pension. But with that, I'd let Cheryl take over, and thank you all for watching tonight.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. Finally this week moving up from New Jersey. So a lot of this project has been managed from down in New Jersey, and I'm just very thrilled to be here now to be able to do it. They will make some forward progress. Let's start with what a mishoon is. So our people and a lot of the other indigenous tribes in New England use dugout canoe or a mishoon to travel in lakes, large bodies of water, rivers, things like that. I'm going to go right over this next slide, which tells how it's made, because I can show you, as recently, some of our tribal members have taken on the process of doing traditional machine learning. The one that you see here on the left-hand side was done last November, and that was the first mishoon that Nipmucs have burned probably in several hundred years. This one over here was just done about 2 weeks ago in Wayland, Mass. And the whole process of it involves felling a tree, debarking it, putting it on some type of a support, as you can see over here in this area. They have barn supports.
What kind of tree?
Well, it used to be chestnut, but white pine was also used, and that's pretty much what they've used here and what we believe the other ones are as well, the ones that we'll learn more about in a few minutes. So these are modern, obviously they're being made right now, and the whole process is lighting a fire like you see over here on top of the log, and it just involves a lot of manual labor of burning and scraping. The fire will be pushed down to one end and the charcoal will be scraped out, then it will be pushed to the other end, charcoal will be scraped out until it is at the desired depth and is shaped the way that it's burnt. This can take up to a week to do, and it's round the clock burning. So these men typically just set up a camp there in that area and do that burning and scraping all week long. It's a community type of a thing. You cook right there on that fire. There's ceremony, there's feasting, there's just a interaction with other community members as they come to support those that are doing the machine. And then here you can see that this is our Song's chief, Cheryl Holly. She's cooling down one of the gunnels here because it is a controlled burn. You know, it's burning for a week, but you're choosing where the fire is going and how much of it's burning. So she's using water to cool down the sides of it to make sure that they don't get too low or too thin. And that's also a process. Here you can see where they move the fire down so they can scrape that part out. It's a great shot from the inside of it, so you can see what it looks like. And their finished product. This is the one that was in Ashfield last November. Okay, so let's talk about why we would want to use a dugout as opposed to birch bark canoe. A mishoon would be used, as I said before, these big bodies of water because they're very heavy. You can't move them from place to place. Like you could move this one that's much lighter from place to place. You could two men, even one, could carry it on your shoulders and move it. The other one, that was formerly a tree. It can take 6 to 8 men to move one of those even after it's been burned out. So you would want to leave it where you're going to use it and not move it from camp to camp. So in that case, during the winter, the owners or the makers would fill it with large rocks and sink it below the surface of the freezing point. So here, under the ice, this is resting for the winter. If we leave it outside for the winter time, think about the trees in the winter. When it gets super cold, they pop. Why are they popping? Because they're expanding from the cold. They're freezing and expanding. So by submerging it just below the ice line, it's keeping it at one constant temperature all winter long. So it's reminding it, the way I like to think about it, it's reminding it that it's a mishoon and that it needs to be in water as opposed to when it's out on the banks, on the shoreline, am I a tree? Am I supposed to, what am I, so this is how I like to think of it, especially when I'm, talking about it with some of my students. So, hold on, are you doing something over there?
Sorry.
You good? Because my slides aren't moving. I'm wondering what happened here. I don't know what you did, but the slides aren't moving. Still not moving. All right, let me see if I can do it over here. I think maybe if you click on my presentation again, let's see if that worked. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so here's the result of improperly stored mishoonash. Mishoonash is the plural of mishoon. Okay, this is what happens. It essentially becomes firewood. It develops these cracks, these splits here, and right down the middle, usually you end up having 2 halves laying on the bank. And by submerging it under the ice line like that in the wintertime, not only are you saving a tree, you're saving yourself a week's worth of labor. Yes?
Before it's submerged, does it get coated with anything?
Some people do coat it. It's white, since it's pine, it does have a measure of creosote already. That's, but there are some that do seal it with the type of a pine or a resin. Okay, so we know what a mishoon is now. I'm going to bring you to Lake Quinsigamond and introduce you to our project, Project Mishoon. This is my baby. It's a lovely place. For those of you who don't know where Lake Quinsigamond is, it forms the boundary between Worcester and Shrewsbury. It's a glacial lake, which I just found out had a fault line running underneath it. I never knew that before. But yeah, it does have a fault line running right under the lake. And so right in the heart of Nipmuc country, Lake Quinsigamond. It all started with eBay. I got a little hit in my email by doing a search for Nipmuc, and it popped up that the location of a dugout canoe was up for auction. And I was a little concerned. Anyway, I bid on it, but unfortunately I was sick with the flu when it ended and I lost the bid. There were only two people that bid on it. I bid on it, and an auction dealer or an antiques dealer also bid on it as well. And he's the one that won for $26. He got the location of a possible dugout canoe at the bottom of Lake Quinsigamond. So I contacted the person who was auctioning off the location and tried to explain to him that I was a member of the Nipmuc tribe and that I was concerned this may potentially be something that my ancestors had left behind, and would I be able to, at least talk with the person who had won the bid, or could he share with us as well? So we all hashed it out between the antique dealer and the seller, and I was able to get the location. So then I'm in a panic. I have this location of what could be a canoe, what could be an Indian dugout canoe. I'm trying to figure out, what do I do next? So I contacted the Underwater Board, or the Massachusetts Board of Underwater Archaeological Resources, and this guy right here answered the phone. And I can tell you, he talked me down off a ledge. Because as you can tell from my bio, I'm not an archaeologist. I am a scientist, I was, but I have no knowledge of archaeology except for the 1 or 2 classes I took in college back in the 80s. So don't really have too much knowledge there. He said, okay, first let's see if it really is a dugout. Let's go check it out. So again, what happened here? I lost my slides again. Okay. It's like when you touch it, it's like the tab, it switches.
Vic was touching. Come on, Vic, what are you doing?
You broke it.
We'll let some other people.
I think if you just
here.
click
Yeah.
on,
Let
you're
some
letting
other-
people in?
Yeah, a
Okay.
few others join. So,
Okay.
but I think.
Hi,
try it
friends
now.
at home. All right. There it
There we
goes.
go.
All right. So on a very chilly May day, one of our tribal elders and I and a good friend of our tribe went out in a rowboat to the middle of the lake, and we met Vic and one of the divers, Chris Hugo, and several other people that came out with equipment to help us determine if it actually was a mishoon. And he's in the water. He's looking for about a half an hour. So let me step back there a minute. The diver who had discovered this recreational diver from Connecticut, he was supposed to come out and mark the site for us so that the diver could just go right into the water, and he wasn't able to make it out there. So he just gave us the address. And so, yes, it was raining. It was a cold, rainy day in May. And he was, he told us that it was raining. He wasn't coming out, and he couldn't mark the spot. And I'm like, you're going in the water anyway. What difference does it make if it's raining? So yeah, he gave me the address, and I gave that address to the diver, Chris Hugo, and he got into the water, and about a half an hour later came up and said nothing. I couldn't find anything. He goes, I'm gonna go a little further in the other direction and see what I can find. So then he comes back up, and sure enough, he says, I think we have something. There's that, what you were talking about earlier tonight. Here we are all huddled over this little camera. We're watching this drop down camera go over this line of rocks. And you can see a little bit of the edge of the canoe, and everybody's cheering, and did a little ceremony. And then we went over and made sure that we secured a permit for this to make sure that it was protected right away. We didn't really know much else about it except that there was something there. So Our next set, well, let me tell you, this is all I ever get to see because I'm not a diver. So just keep these two pictures in mind right here. See these two floats right here. All right, because I'm going to tell you in a minute, if I can get to the next one, what happened as a result of the little original dive when we went out with Vic and his crew and when the recreational diver went back in the water. So here is what we ended up. That Bob Michelson and Michael Prang, they came out with some of their camera equipment and were able to give us very nice pictures of the mishoon. It took us, I think, maybe 11 years to get them. But because the environment of these mishoonash it's really tricky. I'll explain that in a minute. I'm just trying to get to the point where you can see where we're actually at the permit. So here, I have another person. So here, this is the CRM aspect, cultural resource management. The whole entire lake is under permit now because of the research that was done on this. And that means that these, as well as any other artifacts that are at the bottom of the lake are protected. It's not just our mishoonash, it's anything else that's down there. A steamer that's found, anything from White City that's found, anything from the original bridges, the causeway, all that stuff is all now protected. And it means that certain steps have to be taken, certain permits have to be secured. So right now we're in the reconnaissance phase for this. And we'll go through all the particulars and what we've completed in that. But I have to toot our horn a little bit here and let you know that the Nipmuc are the first Indigenous people to hold a BUA or anything like this. And the other thing that I have to do is just offer tremendous kudos to Vic Mastone and to David Robinson, who have helped us navigate, no pun intended, navigate this whole thing because, you know, as I said before, I'm not an archaeologist. I don't have any knowledge of this at all, but they've been so helpful and not guiding us, but walking alongside us for this, you know, respecting the whole aspect of our culture and our traditions and not saying this is what you have to do. It's what would you like to do, you know, and let's hear your side of it and what's important to you about this. And that's a big thing for us to know that, you know, we have that in front of us, that it's not something that anyone else is trying to control. All right, so our project phases, and here's where we get into the really interesting things. The documentation and assessment, first getting those, the archaeologists in the water over here, like they're safe. And over here, this was our first big dive, the July following the permit. And that's when they were able to, so we said it was Kevin McBride, who else was there?
David.
Yeah.
David Robinson, David Truby.
Yes.
I can't remember who was on Kevin's staff.
Okay. So there were several archaeologists that went down there to evaluate them. And we did not have the luxury of having a photographer at that time. The pictures came a little bit later on. Pictures I'm going to show you will be the very first ones that we had. But for now, what's the big deal? Why is this so important? So think about all of the dugouts or the mishoon that you've already seen in New England or heard about in New England. Most of them are in museums. Most of them were taken out of the water in because they were exposed during a dry spell, or somebody, maybe it was something that they had seen poking out of the side of a bank, but there aren't very many of them. The key here is that these two of them, the two that are on the Worcester side, were just as their owners left them, perfectly preserved, the rocks still in them, in situ, which is very unusual. Usually you don't see anything like this. They're just already in a museum and preserved or conserved, or not very well conserved. You know, I think they just had to re-glue the one in Weymouth, is what I heard, that it split down the middle and they had to spend like $7,000 to re-glue it recently. Yeah. So that's, these discoveries are important to us because it reaffirms our presence, not just to our youth that are coming up the pike, but to non-Indigenous people. saying, oh yeah, they really, okay, you know, we always heard Nipmucs lived around that lake. Here's some evidence of that as well. But it's a thread for us, you know, it's from our ancestors to my generation and now to the upcoming generation, as we saw with the young men that were burning the mishoonash there. So it's something that started with the past and we're carrying it through to the present. And then again, me being an educator, it's a wonderful educational opportunity for all ages and for all communities. So I love that movement as well. Now, these are our very first pictures. I think these came from an underwater camera, like one of those little ones you could buy in the you know, yeah.
Deadline.
Yeah, so here, it's a very challenging environment. You can only see about 2 to 3 feet in front of you. It's very silty. It's about 25 feet down, so it's very dark and very cold. You need a dry suit to dive there. So it's challenging in getting there, a challenge in finding them, a challenge in avoiding the debris that's down there with them, and a challenge in trying to do any kind of work, whether it's assess them, photograph them, you know, measure them, anything. It's challenging. But they did it anyway. They were able to get core samples from 2 of them. One of them has been tested now, and that's been carbon dated to the 1640s. Which made us very happy to hear that, of course. And also in the process, let me see if I can use my laser pointer here. Oh, there it is. So the divers brought up 2 rocks from one of the mishoonash. And when they came up, they handed me one of those rocks, that big one right there, because I still have it on my desk, and said, you're probably the first Nipmuc to hold this in hundreds of years. So let me tell you, never has a rock meant so much to me ever. It's just a rock to most people, but to me, that was a direct connection to my ancestors. It was like electric in my hand. And I bring this when I do other presentations where I know that there will be people from my community there because they want to do the same thing. Did you bring the rock? Because they just want to put their hand on it, because they want that connection. Who, you know, they don't know who it was, they just know it was one of their ancestors that put that rock in there, and they want to be able to form that connection.
How big is it? Did they use
The rock?
rocks or?
That particular rock is about this big, but it's filled with rocks, as you'll see. We have much better pictures in a minute. They're coming. That's a core sample that they were taking. It's that same shot that I showed you earlier. It's just a little, I just zoomed in a little so you can see the actual core sample that they were taking. So here's another very important moment for us. This was the mishoon that they did in Asheville, the first one that they did last November. And right here is the rock from the mishoon at the bottom of the lake. So that right there, us connecting our ancestors and our youth, very powerful moment for us. Okay, so how do you feel about twins? So actually, this one right here, number 1, was not the one that the recreational diver found. That's the one that was discovered when we went out with the BUAR to see if it actually was mishoon. October, after the permit was already filed, the recreational diver called me up and said, how do you feel about twins? I'm like, huh? He says, how do you feel about twins? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, the one that you documented already with the state, that wasn't the one that I found. There was another one that was there, and it's only about 50 feet away from it. And they're very similar, probably made by the same family or the same maker. You'll see a lot of similarities in the pictures. As you can tell up here, they have this little ledge in the back, which may or may not be a seat. In the gunnels here, there are some notches, and we're not really sure what they are. We know they're not oarlocks because we don't row, we paddle. Okay, we don't row, we paddle. We have no use for it unless it was a paddle rest, or maybe outriggers, or possibly, as we learn more, maybe something where they were used in conjunction with each other. That's another mystery to be solved, but they are unusual. And now we have twins. So we have twins on the Worcester side now. And that's when I was showing you, if you remember those 2 little floats, those 2 little orange floats there, that's how close they are together. Let me just grab a little sip of water here before I'm calling. Okay, so these are situated at the bottom of the slope. Right here, this part is not missing, it's just buried in silt. And at some point they were submerged, and I guess we don't know how it happened, but made their way down the slope and are now buried nose first in the silt. So they're kind of on a slant at the base of this slope. All right. So our documentation and assessment, we've completed a preliminary archaeological evaluation of all 3 mishoonash. We'll get to the 3rd one in a minute. Video footage of shorelines and divers, and collection of samples for radiocarbon dating, photography, and videography. This right here is actually a mosaic. If you look carefully, we see the change in the light. That those are where the pictures are stitched together. Because it's so long, and they're usually 14 or 15 feet long, they you can't just get it in one shot. And because it's a reconnaissance permit, they're not allowed to anchor themselves to the bottom, because the whole area around this here could potentially be, something, could have artifacts in it as well. So they can't anchor themselves to the bottom. They need to float above it while they're photographing it. So here, this part right here is actually where the diver was, Michael Prang was actually floating a little further away from it, but this is actually one uniform length right here. It was just a little more buoyant. We have to kind of eventually Photoshop it to make it look exactly as it looks. Okay, so here's number 1. And these are pictures that we have. Let me go back to that one for a second. This is the back part of it right here, the stern, this part right here. And then again, now this right here, we're not sure if that's a knot that worked itself loose or an intentionally made hole, but it is in the sketch right here. And you can see that that's kind of unusual there as well. I'm not really sure what that was for, but we have seen historical sketches of mishoons that have like a post in that same area with a type of an oil lantern, not one that's made from metal, but that's made from shell or board. So that's possible. I mean, we're not really sure. It could have been for eel fishing. So they needed that the night light there. Here is one of those notches that we're talking about right here. That's on this side. And you can see how large the rocks are in it now. These are the size of the rocks that are in here. That's number 1. There's number 2. These sketches are all by our then project archaeologist, David Robinson, who is now the state underwater archaeologist. So they've Dave and Victor have switched places, switched roles in this for us, which was a huge relief for me because I rely on them so much for everything. So this is the back part of it here. And so here, this is another concern. Here's the side of it right here. It's this side over here. This thing, I have no idea what it is, but it's big and it looks heavy and it's round and it's metal and it makes me nervous because it's resting against the side of it. And that's one of my biggest concerns with these because they're so fragile. Think of a wet sponge, squishy like a wet sponge. Because they're so fragile, something can hit it, it can easily cause damage to it. There are things that are resting at the bottom right up against them. There's a bottle in one of them. There's debris all around them, which I have pictures of some of that. Let me just see if it'll show up after we get to number 3. And then there's boat anchors. The boaters there, they drop their anchors and then they move location without pulling up that little anchor that they have just to keep them in place. When we were doing the side scan, you could see all the anchor drag marks on the bottom. And, that gives me great anxiety. My biggest thing is when we have divers out there for the first time, I said, please just let me know the rope hang because I don't really know what the status of them is from one dive to the next. There's nothing there protecting them. All right, so here's number 3. Number 3 is on the Shrewsbury side of the lake, across and a little further north, I believe. And this one is not great condition. It's in a different environment. You can see the water is lighter. The bottom is gravelly. I've been told there's a current that runs over it. So the whole environment is not conducive to preservation. This is all that's left of it is the bottom part. You can see the rocks that are on it and that other part that was sticking up in the back that we think is the stern. Is it older? Don't know. We haven't dated this one yet. Eventually, maybe we'd like to, document it. It is part of the history that's there. This is, if it did look like this, that's probably what's left of it. Okay, surveying the lake. We've used sonar up and down the length, the majority of the lake. There's a little section at the northeast part of the lake that we haven't done yet. There are many targets there, and I'll show you in a minute what I'm talking about. But for those of you that don't know, I'm going to give you the layman's person of side scan sonar because this is all I understand. If there's anybody else that wants to jump in, you're welcome to. So there's a towfish, like this one right here, that gets pulled behind the boat under the water, and it sends out a sound signal, sonar. When it hits something that's very dense on the bottom, it reflects the sound back, and we see that in like a light signal. That's how we can see it when it comes back to us. If it's something that isn't as dense, that sound gets absorbed. I'm hoping I'm close with that. Yes? Okay, good. All right, so there's the towfish, not done, it's a magnetometer. We are seeing the images in real time on the boat as the towfish is going over the lake bottom. And this is what we see on the screen. Here are some examples of what the sonar has shown us. So here is number one, right here. And if you look at the inside of it, it seems to be lighting up, and that's because of the rocks that are inside of it. The rocks are very hard and dense, so when that sonar hits it, it's sending back a light signal to us. Here's number two over here. This one right here. And you can see again, the inside of it's lighting up. Instead of it looking like just a log on the bottom, it's lighting up from the rocks that are inside of it. And this one over here is number three. Now, these are other targets that we have seen at the same time. We can't just say, oh, that's another mishoonash. You know, that's another mishoon. We have to say, this is potential target, record the GPS coordinates, and hopefully put divers down in the water, eyes on them to say, yep, that's another mishoon, or no, it's just a log with some cable in it or something. They'll help us, sort that out by actually putting eyes on it. We've also seen a whole lot of other interesting stuff at the bottom of the lake. This is a steamer right here. I'll show you a picture of one of those in a minute. Lots of cars. This is a modern canoe right here, and the reason why that one's lighting up so much is because it's aluminum. So that hard, dense metal is making it light up. And so that steamer would resemble something like this. And the reason why you're seeing this part here, that's all that railing, and this part right there, that's the metal boiler. It's in the center there. I've been told there's two there. I don't have any information on the second one yet, but a lot of people dive this lake. A lot of people run sonar on it, and coming up with the information. Sometimes people want to hold it close to them, but we're getting there. We're all working together and trying to make sure that the permit covers everybody's needs and needs. So here's another sonar system that was used. And this one puts both of them in perspective to each other, which is nice. Imagine your feet here looking down the slope, and this is the bottom of the lake. Here's machine one, and this is machine two over here. 55-gallon drum, tires, tree stumps, garbage, all around them. Panic attack, right? Frisbees, truck tires. Right over here in this one, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a bottle right in that one. Since these are on a slope, all along here, all kinds of debris have collected right at this end here. There's suntan lotion bottles, antique bottles, garbage, buckets, all kinds of stuff. This is a diver's handprint, possibly from when they were doing the core sample, but it is very fragile. There are people that have ROVs in the lake, those little underwater, mini subs, and they make me nervous because if they get a little too close and they bump it, they could cause damage by just bumping it. So it makes me nervous when I know that, oh, I saw your mishoon, I was down there with my camera. So I'm asking, if you are one of those people, please use caution. They're very fragile. Here's an artifact that was found in the lake, not too far from where the mishoonash are located. This was down from the Edgemere section. And so this is one of numerous artifacts that have been found over time. In the mid-1800s, they had the divers with the lead boots and the big metal helmets and all that go into the lake, and they pulled out a dugout, a mishoon, from up in the Lake Park area. They also pulled out remnants of a birch bark canoe and another axe head like this. I have no idea where they are. We've tried to do research to locate where they could be at this time. We know the mishoon that they took out of the lake in the 1800s is not the one that's in Worcester Historical Museum. That one came from Comets Pond in Hubbardston. So it's not that one. Tried to track it down and nobody seems to know where it ended up or any of the artifacts that the divers collected at that time. We know just from conversations when I do presentations like this, people from the lake will come and say, oh yeah, I remember as a kid walking along the shore and picked up arrowheads, picked up points. So we know that there are more of them out there. We'd like to document them all. So if any of you are tuning in, please let me know so we can get some photographs and measurements of them. We'd love to know more information. Winter work, other things that we have done in addition to the regular dives to document and assess. There was an ice dive that was done, which although we were hoping we were going to have super visibility and get great photos, but the visibility was not good at all. But we had a heck of a lot of fun that day. Let me tell you. Yes, up at the north end, up by the Route 9 bridge, there was a sewer line break, and it just, the water was all stored up, not just from the sewage, but from everything, the work they were doing trying to repair it. So it was a big mess there. So out of the water they were quickly, and but it was very interesting and exciting for us. And I appreciate the work that the divers did that day because we know how dangerous that type of dive can be. You know, any kind of diving is dangerous, but particularly, UMass Boston and Alan Gons came out with some of his students to try ground penetrating radar on the lake through the ice. That was interesting, very skewed though. The data on that was kind of like going through the ice. It was just all over the place. We didn't have anything that was worth reporting on that, but it was worth a try. It was a great idea. Everybody thought it was a great idea. And they learned a lot too, the students, and that's something I love, is when students get pulled in on these things. If we have a professor or a university or a corporation, anybody, particularly the universities that would like to help out with this project, my first thing is please bring students, let them do the work. I want them, you know, I let them do the hands-on stuff, teach them, let them learn from it too. So final disposition, that's where we'll end up, whether we leave them there or we decide to excavate, which involves a whole nother permit. Final disposition means you need to have a place for these to end up. You need to have a building, you need to have the tanks, the equipment, the chemicals, the environment where they're going to be preserved or conserved. And previously we were looking to the town of Worcester for that, hoping that they would be able to provide a building space for us. Problem with some of the museums is that they don't have a space large enough where they can offer it to us for an undetermined amount of time, because we're not really sure how long the whole process will take. Is it going to take 2 years? Is it going to take 3 years? Is it going to take a year and a half? I mean, they don't really know how long, so they don't want to commit to it, and that's understandable. However, now that we have land with structures on it, the Nipmuc people, which we hadn't had in the past, we've had land returned to us, some of the land we've been able to purchase on our own. We have land back with structures on it, potential is there. Where we can also fundraising for a Nipmuc Cultural Center, that's another potential there that it could be part of that as well. That cultural center will have a museum in it, and these will be able to be put there as well. But let me say also that we are also, now that the youth are involved and the elders are involved, and when I say involved is like we're talking with each other a whole lot more these days. Some of the elders are like, leave them right where they are. That's where our ancestors left them, just let them be there. Find a way to protect them where they're at, which makes sense. But the youth are like, no, you know, this is something we can learn from. It's something tangible, something we can see with our own, we can learn from them. Look at how much we've already learned. So we're in discussions about, do we want to excavate one? Do we want to preserve them in place right where they are? And until we've come up with that decision and decide where they will end up, that's where they're going to stay right now at the bottom of the lake where they've been since, you know, the 1600s, perfectly preserved. Now that's the best place for them right now. If we can just find, you know, we can protect them, that would make me feel a whole lot better. Not just protect them with a permit, but protect them, you know, with some type of a, something to stop any damage. Excavation and conservation, this is just very basic. because usually I'm talking to students, but we would need a tank, lake water, chemicals, that it would immediately go into that tank. Chemicals, usually if they were gonna do it, it would be, I think the most common chemical they use is polyethylene glycol, which is circulated through that until it forces the water out of the cells of the wood and replaces it with that harder substance. And then gradually it will harden, and there's no guarantee that it's gonna look the same way it does right now at the bottom of the lake. You know, can twist and contort. So that's another thing that we have to think about. Different types of excavation. We have no idea yet how we would even, we'd have to all put our heads together when the time comes that we would make that decision. Yes, let's excavate one of them or both of them. Then we would need to, then that's what I'm calling on Vic, and I'm calling on David and say, we want to excavate, and they're, are the ones that best know how to do this, and we would begin gathering our resources and doing the fundraising that's necessary. Eventually, you'd like to do a documentary. We have a lot of video and photos already on the way, but there is interest, especially among the tribe. So hopefully we'll get to that point where we can produce a documentary of the whole project. What it means to us, it means that connection to us. That's really important as it is. It's a representation of our past, our ancestors and who we are right now, and the people the ones that are coming down the line after us. And so, yeah, this might be something that's an ancient, people don't use that anymore. They put a motorboat on there, on the lake, or they just get out there with a regular canoe. There's so much involved in making a machine. It's not just burning out the inside of a canoe, with a tree to make a canoe. There's so much involved in it. There's so much community there. There's so much empowerment. And then putting it into the water, reconnecting us back with the Nipi, with the water. That's who we are. Nipmuc, what does that mean? Freshwater people. That's what Nipmuc means. We're people of fresh water. So connecting ourselves in traditional ways is very important to us. This right here is what it's about. And that's the one that they made in Nashville last November. There it is. There's Andre on that little ledge, that little seat there. And he said it's actually good for him. Because he can steer better up there instead of being lowered in a canoe. So that's interesting thing there. But look, he's got youth in that canoe. He showed them how to burn that mishoon. He's teaching them paddling songs. We had community there helping them burn it out, learning about it. All those things are so important to us. That's what the whole idea of the machine is about. It's not just an old-fashioned canoe. It's really important to us as a whole. These are the things that we have coming down the pike. Finding a suitable place, which I feel like we're getting closer to every day. The Lake Quinsigamond Museum, that's kind of, I think we're backing up from that now since we have more things available to us for us to do on our own. Originally, we had been thinking about doing something on the lake, including all of the lake history, all of the different ethnic clubs that were there on the lake, and the gata, that they do, and rowing, all of that, White City. But then this would be just a small part of that museum, and this is so much bigger for us. So we want to do our own thing with this. We're going to continue monitoring the sites. We'd like to finish the rest of the survey and investigate a few more of those targets there, and continue our research. We'd also like to know about the lake levels, still working on trying to get information on how those lake levels rose when the lake was dammed. And possibly excavate, if not, at least preserve them or protect them where they are. Obviously, we're always looking for project partners, and we're always looking for funding. All of these people have been involved in the project. We always want to give that, to offer our thanks to them, because they've all stepped up to help us. And we wouldn't be where we are now if it wasn't for them. And again, I really want to go to Victor and David, because all those people that you saw up there, we wouldn't have had that interaction, that networking with if it wasn't for them. So again, thank you, sir. I don't think, time for video, it's not working, so we're gonna have to skip the video because I couldn't get it to work on this one earlier. But if you have questions, yes,
I would assume that when the Nipmuc sunk a canoe, that it was very close to shore because
Yes.
they had to recover.
yes.
So the fact that they're down so deep now, is that because the character of the lake has changed? Or did they just slide out of sight? How did they get in deep water?
That's one of the mysteries. We're not quite sure. My guess is that, it could have been some type of an act of nature, whether it was that very thick ice shifting. So imagine this thick ice and they've sunk it, I know that one ice dive we did, the ice was 18 inches thick. So think about if they had sunken that, submerged it in 3 feet of water, and they had 20 inches that year. When that ice is breaking up, there's tremendous force when that ice is moving. Those things were very close to the edge. So I'm trying to think of how I can show you that. If this is where they were submerged and that ice shifted them just a little too close, they could have just made their way down the edge of the slope. Who knows? There are tornadoes over the lake. There's been hurricanes over the lake. I don't know if there was enough lake level rising with the dams to really, that they would have been that deep originally. I think that they slid somehow out of their original position. That would be my guess. I don't know if there's anybody that, can you tell if there's anybody here that has any?
Question is,
Yes.
the auction?
Yes,
The person that put up the auction,
yeah,
he found. the
yes,
boat.
yes.
And so did he want to sell to you like it's northwest of the pine tree and
No.
give you coordinates or something?
So there were no coordinates. And so let me just say that he had good intentions. He had actually contacted the Board of Underwater Archaeological Resources, finding out what should we do next. But to him, the process was just way beyond what he could even think, between his knowledge, his finances, all of that. He just I don't know what to do. I need to find somebody that can, that would be interested in this. So I put it on eBay and it was an address that he gave me. It was just a street address of the house where it was located, out in the water. And that's where we went from there.
What happened to the person who did the auction?
So the person who ran the auction put me in touch with him, and he was an antique dealer, and I called him up and I explained everything, and he's like, he says, this is really awesome. He says, I'm so glad it found its way to your tribe. That's where it should be. He said, just do me a favor and just keep me, stay in touch and keep me updated on the project. And he says, I'm happy to cut the strings with this. So, I just reimbursed him for it anyway, just to make sure all those strings were cut, gave him the $25 or whatever it was. And that we went from there. And that's when I started okay, now what do I do? And eventually found my way to Vic, and he saved the day. Like I said, he had talked me down off the ledge that first phone call. But it was, it really, that very first day, actually seeing them on that first one on that little camera it was such an experience. I think really for all of us, we were all very excited about it. It's like this little cheering section on the boats. Yay, that's really a mishoon. So yeah, it was very cool. Yes.
You suspect there are more, particularly in the area that is not quite as surveyed?
So we have done a lot of sonar, side scan sonar, survey on that lake, and we have numerous targets that look similar to what a mishoon looks like on sonar. And these are first images anywhere of mishoonash with rocks in them on sonar. That's a pretty neat thing right there. So we have tagged all of those with GPS coordinates. We believe there probably are other ones there. I mean, my ancestors lived all around that lake for eons. Think about, there's Wigwam Hill, Quinsigamond itself, all around that. There's signs of my ancestors being there for years upon years upon years. So there's no reason why there wouldn't be more. It's just a matter of the time, the money, the divers that are willing to get out there, and some of them are located in areas where there's a lot of debris. So it could be, sketchy for them to dive there. There's a lot of cable there, there's a lot of 55-gallon drums, there's a lot of, it's just, some of it's very messy down there. I don't like to put them at risk. Is there anybody there?
So Dave Robinson says it was a great presentation.
Well, thank you, sir.
And we also have a question from Craig Nelson, who said, who supplied the side scan sonar?
Okay, so we had two different companies out there. One of them was CR Environmental, and the other one was OSI, which is, I think, Ocean Surveys Incorporated.
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, CR Environmental and OSI. Anybody else there in virtual land?
I asked if people had questions, so I sent that to the chat. So we had a couple.
Okay, that's fine. Anybody else?
I have a question for Vic.
Yeah, hey, he's here. You got questions at home? The guy's here.
If I were to put a hand on this thing, and you created, damage, how can you possibly excavate without it falling apart?
There's actually, I talked to archaeologists in the Netherlands about recovering this. And Cheryl and I were visiting colleagues, some of your friends. And they suggest that the way they remove actually dugouts from the Rhine that are much larger, like on the order of 10 times this size.
So you have the losses too.
Well, but a dugout is still different because you want to keep it as stable as possible. Like, they actually said that they were able to put sheet metal underneath them, so you get below the dirt from the subsoils, and then use that as the cradle, and then also package it. I have to admit that might be my input. Because I found that I'm not a very stable diver, but I was so excited that I think I may have sort of gone wow, and put my hand there, because I knew I was so that close to that one. Honestly, it probably wasn't me, but they were just to see it underwater, and even though only seeing about 18 inches to 24 inches of it.
But you think it could be recovered?
Oh, yeah, they can be recovered. It's just a very delicate operation, and you gotta think about the mass that you're lifting and the cradle, the weight of the cradle, it's gonna be huge. This is not like lift bags, let's bring it up. This is bringing in a crane on a barge or on land and recovering it. And then the question really becomes how long you can keep it and move it, how far do you want to move it, because every sort of foot of movement is the potential. And while we were talking about them moving, I'll have to go back and do my research, but the great earthquake of 16, whatever, I'm forgetting that you have a feature there. I wonder if they were sort of
Well,
shaking
that
down
was,
the slope.
I'm thinking, so this is my thinking, because I only found out about this fault line like about 2 months ago, and my mind has just been going crazy with it, because there were two big earthquakes. One was like 1720s, and the other one was 1750s. I think the one was offshore in Boston. And this fault line, I think it's the Clinton-Newberry line, goes right under the lake. So my thought process is, if that had been much later that those things slid down, they wouldn't be intact the way they are. They just would have caved in on themselves. So they would have had to have been relatively, still firm. The wood would have had to have been still, not as waterlogged for them to remain after in the condition they're in after they slid. So 1700s might make sense there. That was like a 6.0 earthquake. That was all, in the mid 1700s. There was one in New Hampshire and one right off the coast of Boston.
There was like an earlier one.
And one in
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I just don't remember.
Yeah, this one, it was in the ocean, but offshore off in Boston. So, okay, was the Waystone found on the lake? Waystone, was that the axe head?
Yeah.
The axe head, so that stone axe head, yes, that was found on the southern end of the lake in the general area of where the mishoonash are located. They're south of the Route 9 bridge, all of them. And that particular piece was found, I think it was in like ankle deep water. The person had said down in the Edgemere section. Okay, so
Dave's sharing.
Oh yeah, he's sharing the information on who did the side scan sonar. Yes.
I have a question. You
Yes.
you mentioned the 1640s date
Mhm.
on Was that on both of the canoes or just one that got taken?
We've only done the one, but it was one of the two twins,
Right, and do we know what kind of wood they're made out of?
white pine.
They are white pine,
Yeah,
so it's like
they did do
a
that
wood
study.
pine spot and stuff, yeah,
Yes.
okay, cool.
How did you age
How were they aged?
Yeah.
Carbon 14, radiocarbon.
So you took these,
They did core samples, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Very exciting.
is that what you were reaching for?
I dropped the.
So, I mean, to me, it just kind of looks like some of the silt was just moved out of the way, that silt that builds up over it. There are instances though, like they're not here, but I have photographs of the gunnels where you can see something has hit it. You know, something has fallen through the water and hit it and fallen off to the side because it's a splinter.
The cinder blocks are on number 3.
Yeah, there are cinder blocks around number 3. So it makes me very nervous. That's why I said, you know, especially when you think about, you know, parties that are out on the lake, people throwing stuff off, that one has a beer bottle in it. And you know, when people go out there ice fishing, sometimes they leave stuff out there or they just push it down the hole. Makes me nervous. So that's why I'm always appreciative of the divers when they go down there, you know, several years apart. I'm like, please just let me know they're okay. And I come up and, yeah, they're good, they're good. Okay, I can breathe for a few more.
How far is the closest?
Oh, they're,
75 feet.
yeah, they're not far out at all.
Are there floats still that looking?
No, we've tried to keep the location of them as, you know, quiet as possible. The people, we have a network of people on the lake who are eyes on the lake. They know where they are because in some cases, we've asked permission to use their property. And so I let them know when we're going to be out there, and where if I'll have, like, if you are out there, let me know when, if I'm not going, so I can, you know, they don't call the police on you. Or they don't call me, but yes, I have a little, you know, a lake network that they're part of our team, and they help keep eyes on the lake for us to make sure that things are okay there. But even a lot of the photos that I use, like we have a Facebook page that has a lot more of the underwater photos, and there's also some underwater video there as well that Bob Michelson has done. You can see him going right over one of them. It's pretty cool to watch. But in some of the still photos, I Photoshop out the background so people can't tell exactly where the dives are taking place. Because I just don't want people trying to, you know, and again, it's not something that you can just do in a wetsuit. You need to have, it's the challenging dive.
The thermal climbs at 10 feet. It drops from like the 60s to the high 30s.
So,
It's not a very pleasant change.
yeah, it's about like around high 40 degrees all year round down there. So you would need to have, you know, dry suit and know what you're doing. Wouldn't be something you could just put a suit on and go check them out. Okay,
No more
anybody else?
questions?
No?
Very good.
Oh, of course.
All right.
And I like some of the new images, it's great.
Wow.
Some more images.